What we're looking at here is creating your own free personal VPN using Tailscale and a Raspberry Pi. You don't need one of the latest Raspberry Pis to run this. I'm using the original Raspberry Pi from 2012, so if you're looking at buying a device just to do this, then you could probably get away with a Raspberry Pi Zero 2W. So, why do I use this setup? I sometimes spend long periods outside the country, and so I want my internet traffic to appear as if it's just coming from my house. This setup allows me to securely route all of my internet traffic back through my home. So, for example, I can still watch UK streaming services, and this also lets me access Wi-Fi calling. This means, when I'm abroad, my phone stays in aeroplane mode but with the Wi-Fi turned on, so together with the VPN, my phone acts as if it is on my home Wi-Fi. Well, I find that WhatsApp is great for keeping in touch with family and friends when I'm abroad. There are times, especially when dealing with a company in your home country, that you have to call them. I find that Wi-Fi is fairly prevalent where I go, with many locations offering free Wi-Fi such as hotels, offices, cafes, airports and tourist attractions. So Wi-Fi calling is much cheaper than roaming and much more convenient than getting a SIM card for the country you're visiting. I've recently returned from UAE, where calls to the UK would cost me £2.50 a minute, or about $3. So using a VPN means that when I'm connected to a public Wi-Fi network, that all the network sees is a stream of encrypted data which is heading off to the Raspberry Pi to be decrypted before it is forwarded to the internet. And then when it's returned to the phone, it is encrypted again by the Raspberry Pi before it reaches the phone. Why are we using this setup? Well, the Raspberry Pi is a low-cost single-board computer, which uses very little power, although in early 2023 there are still issues finding Raspberry Pis to buy, so this could be made to work with other low-cost single-board computers. This VPN reduces the complexity of setting up a WireGuard server on a non-static IP address, which is what you'll almost certainly have at home. This means that the IP address which your internet traffic goes out from your home onto the internet regularly changes. So for example, my IP address which my ISP gives me seems to change every few weeks or so. Also, this setup gets around owning ports, which can be complicated. For example, I have a mesh Wi-Fi system which is connected to my home router, which would mean I would have to open ports on both sets of routers. Some people would be on mobile-based routers which run on 4 or 5G, in which case port forwarding is not possible behind the mobile phone network's CGNAT system. First and foremost, head to login.tailscale.com/start and set up a Tailscale account using one of the login providers shown. Before we start using the Raspberry Pi, we first have to set up the Raspberry Pi's SD card. We use the Raspberry Pi Imager from raspberrypi.com to download the Raspberry Pi Lite image, which we're going to write to the SD card. We're going to make sure that we have SSH access enabled and that we have set a password. If you have a Raspberry Pi with Wi-Fi access, you can set this up here. Then be sure to select the drive where the SD card is mounted and write the image to it. You want to be careful and not accidentally overwrite any other devices which are connected to your computer. Now we wait for our SD card to be written. Before ejecting the SD card, plugging it in to the Raspberry Pi and powering the Raspberry Pi on. We then open Windows PowerShell, which we will log into our Raspberry Pi from. You can press the Windows key and start typing PowerShell to find it. To log on to our Raspberry Pi, we need to know its IP address on the network. You could log on to your router through a browser or an app to see the IP address of connected devices. Or if you don't know how to find that, you can use a program called the Adafruit Raspberry Pi Finder, and there's a link for that below. So here I'm going to log into the Raspberry Pi via SSH at 192.168.5.185. Pi is the username and the default when we made the SD card. If you set another username, use that, type in our password and then we're in. The first thing we're going to do is check and apply software updates, so we'll do sudo apt-get update. All the commands will be in the description below. Next we do sudo apt-get upgrade -y. -y means it will automatically say yes to any further questions. Now we start to install Tailscale using this command, and you can paste into the PowerShell using the right mouse button. So we can see that the installation is finished. Before running the command to start Tailscale, let's enable the IP forwarding feature. For that, copy and paste the next 3 commands into PowerShell. Now if you get an IPv6 error like this, don't worry. Let's run the command to start Tailscale with an additional flag that will mark the Raspberry Pi as a traffic forwarder. Copy the link into your browser and log in using the Tailscale account you created earlier. In your browser, you'll get a message indicating that the Raspberry Pi has successfully been set up and that you should then be taken to the admin console. Once at the admin console, we will disable key expiry on the Raspberry Pi, otherwise the Raspberry Pi would need to be re-authenticated every 180 days, which could be an issue if you're away and unable to access it via the local network. Then we'll turn on switch for enabling the exit node option. The Raspberry Pi can act as the exit node for our VPN. Lastly, we should go to our phone to set that up, download the Tailscale app from the Google Play Store and log in. Once it's logged in, exit the admin console and go back to the Tailscale app. Make sure that the switch is on active and go to the 3 dots. Select Use Exit Node and select Raspberry Pi. If you want to make sure that your phone is always using the VPN while you're away, you can explore the VPN settings in your phone's settings menu. There are some drawbacks when using Tailscale. Running Tailscale all the time on both Android and iOS seems to currently use a lot of battery. I've experienced about 24% battery drain when using it constantly. However, when I'm using my phone away, I'm often not away from power sockets for long periods of time. And when I'm back in the UK, I don't use it unless I'm on a public Wi-Fi. You can install Tailscale on computers to use it as a VPN. However, as Tailscale is set up and the way Windows is configured, I get DNS leaks on Windows, which does not seem to be the case on Android or iOS. This means that DNS requests are sent outside the encrypted VPN tunnel, which can undermine some of the privacy and security benefits of using a VPN. All of my testing has shown that the mobile apps don't have DNS leaks, so you're perfectly fine and safe using them, and they will route all of your traffic, including your DNS requests, via your Raspberry Pi.